While connected technology is essential for unlocking new efficiencies on the production floor, it's also presented hackers with new opportunities to steal valuable IP and data. To support OT professionals in their battle with cyber criminals, we launched the Security Breach podcast. In each of our over 100 episodes, we've brought in cybersecurity specialists to provide valuable insights and break down critical topics. As a go-to podcast for our listeners, we want to help you align your brand with our expertise. By sponsoring our podcast, your brand will build trust and your message will stand out to an audience searching for tools to assist their cybersecurity efforts. Secure your share in this rapidly growing segment by sponsoring Security Breach. Contact us today to learn more. Hi, I'm Jeff Ranke, Editorial Director of Manufacturing.net and Manufacturing Business Technology. Welcome to Security Breach. The pace of technological advancement and the evolution of hacker behaviors makes recording episodes of this podcast in advance a bit of a risk. See, there's always the worry that whatever we discuss could become less relevant by the time it goes live. Today's episode, however, kind of bucks that trend. You see, the number of AI programs that have made headlines recently for busting out of their developmental sandbox, well, it's generated some justifiable scrutiny of AI-based security solutions. And while all these developers deserve all the heat they're getting, it's also important to not let these missteps serve as an excuse to delay your use of AI in strengthening cyber defenses. I'm excited to have you listen to a conversation I had recently with AirMDR CEO Kumar Saurabh. His unbridled enthusiasm about how AI can help the good guys keep pace with evolving threats and implement solutions far more quickly and cost-effectively than even months ago serves as a critical reminder to continue moving forward with AI implementations, albeit at possibly a more measured pace. Kumar, welcome to Security Breach. So usually we take some time before we start hitting people over the head with artificial intelligence talk, but I think that's really going to be the focus of a lot of what we discuss here today, along with detection and response. So let's kind of jump right into it a little bit and setting up some of the things that you and AirMD are really about. We know how AI has evolved for the bad guys. We know how they're using it. We know how they're getting better at attacking us. But could you talk a little bit about the evolution for the good guys? How can the good guys use AI a little bit more in their defenses?
So I think the same kind of tools, especially the AI capabilities that attackers have, defenders have as well, right? That's the good news part of it. Two capabilities in particular, right? Coding has become really easy, right? And what that means is you can just tell Claude, I use Claude every week, multiple times a day, right? So I got trained up as a software engineer. I used to write code. Now I just tell Claude to write code and it writes the code for me. That same capability is available for the bad guys. The question is, are the blue teams using that capability to do things that used to take over an hour in under 3 minutes? Because if you're not doing that, the attacks are going to get that sophisticated and going to get that fast, right? 30-minute breakout window is very normal these days, and it's only going to shrink. So that's a capability that I've seen that many, that's one, the coding ability. The other part of it is the knowledge about the systems is actually becoming ubiquitous. For example, you can take a log line that I have spent 25 years in this space. I might not know what this is. You type that into Claude, it will tell you exactly what it is, what other things you want to go chase around. Now, this power can be used by attackers to figure out more things on your network, what is going on, what else can they compromise. But the same thing can also, the same capability, the same power can also be used by the blue teams, the good guys on the cyber defense side of things to figure out, okay, this activity looks weird. What does this really mean? And you don't need to have 25 years of experience. All you need to use the right tools to be able to find a threat before it does much more damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the way that we're evolving and the way kind of emulating what the bad guys are doing, but just making our processes easier, because I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed when we start digging into a lot of the cybersecurity elements in terms of endpoints and inventorying and everything else. Using a lot of these AI tools to simplify it makes a ton of sense. I think this also kind of leads into, because where we're going to be talking about, and a lot of stuff we talked about out at RSA, is if you can mention, just tell us about AirMDR a little bit. Tell us about the company, what the focal points are, and how you're working to help manufacturers.
AirMDR is a managed detection and response company that is primarily agent driven. So it's natively agentic AI native managed detection and response. What does that mean? What that means is I have run a managed detection and response company before, a traditional MDR company before. Let's say you have a SOC team of 10 people, 10 SOC analysts. With the help of agents, you can do what used to take 10 people only 2-3 years ago. You can do that with 1 or 2 people. And some of the results that we are able to see is phenomenal in the sense that 95% of our alerts get investigated in under 5 minutes. Now, if you try to do that with people, it's just not possible, right? The best you can get to is maybe 15 to 20 minutes, but not 5 minutes. The 5 minutes have to be fully automated. The other part that becomes is I have worked with what are called level 1, level 2, level 3 analysts. Level 3 analysts, 10, 15 years of experience, very well paid, not enough of them around to go for a small and medium-sized enterprises to take. And here is the part, the AI agent these days can actually perform as well as 90-95% of level 2 analysts that I have worked with in last 10, 15 years. Now, not better than L3 analysts, but here is the thing. AI agent can do in 5 minutes that an L2 analyst will need 45 minutes to do it, right? So there is a tremendous amount of quality, depth, speed, and we should all be using AI agents to do things that we have had to do that before at a much higher speed, at a much higher volume, without having to spend 5x. So you can literally improve it by 5x with keeping your cost flat or even reducing the cost by 20-30%.
Well, it feels like it answers a couple of different challenges that manufacturers specifically have. When you look at the small to medium-sized manufacturers, most of them will not have a SOC. It's too expensive. There's a ton of input and just expertise that's not available. Well, plugging in some agents, you can have your head of security along with these agents basically being your SOC and helping provide that extra layer of information and analysis. The other thing is we have this huge lack of talent right now. We just don't have enough individuals to fill these positions. Using agentic AI to solve some of these problems seems like a tremendous opportunity and a great fit. But that leads to my next question. Everybody's talking about agentic AI right now, and there's a ton of different definitions out there. Maybe you can shed a little bit of light on that and clarify how you define agentic AI and where are the best uses for it?
So the best way to look at agentic AI is to almost compare it to human agents, right? And we started this company in 23. Co-pilots were the rage and chatbots and things like that. The difference between chatbots and co-pilots is an agent is not a co-pilot. Agent is the pilot. It is actually going to do the thing you want it to do. Then the question really becomes is how do you compare it with human agents and what parts of the job? There will be parts of the job it can do better than human agents. So more power to it. I'm a technologist, right? So I'm not the one that looks at all the negative things that can go with the technology. I'm an optimist by nature, right? So I look at how can we use the new technology to our best advantage. And so going back to the question of what is the definition of an agent? The agent is, it can do a task end to end with minimal supervision, right? You set it a goal, you ask it to do something, you give it all the access, and it does not advise you, it does not tell you what to do, it actually does it. Agency is the big difference. And now, not all agents are created equal, right? You could have created an agent 3 years ago, except it would suck, right? It would just not work really well. Yeah. I mean, that's a fact. You could have built a demo, a prototype that looks and feels like a good agent, but when you compare it to a level two security analyst, for example, who has 5, 10 years of experience, it would be like far inferior. If that AI agent was a person coming in the door, you wouldn't hire it. But here is what I would say. Today, the state of art has become so much better compared to where it was 2 years ago, even, or even where it was 1 year ago. The quality is much, much better.
No, it makes sense. And I think, one of the big questions too, with a lot of things in cybersecurity, especially again, we're looking at the bulk of manufacturers being small to mid-sized. Where do you start? The agentic AI has this tremendous opportunity to really answer a lot of those challenges we have from a manpower and expertise perspective. But what's the best place to start?
So we focus quite a lot on, like, if you look at cybersecurity and risk as, you obviously have a bunch of technologies that do prevention. You have the firewalls, you have the MFAs, they're trying to prevent bad things from happening in the place, right? But the reality is there is a lot of gray area. There is a lot of activity that you have to permit in order to do normal business. You have to let people click on links, download PDFs, right? But phishing attacks also come in through the same mechanism. So you have to be able to distinguish what is bad, what is good, looking at a lot of different factors coming in. And so going back to question, where can a small and medium enterprises start, right? I look at it as a 3-layered cake. The first layer is basically monitoring, right? I will give you an analogy of at my home, right? You have a Nest camera, it's taking pictures, it can give you alerts when it sees some activity, someone at the door, and so on and so forth. So are you monitoring your security stack? Are you getting login event when someone has failed a login 5 times in a row? Are you collecting that kind of telemetry data? Because without the data, you're driving blind. Now, once you start collecting data, the second layer is, when bad thing happens, is there an alert that's going to get generated? Like in the Nest, when it shows someone at the door, it generates an alert. Do you have that machinery in? But here is the point. If you're away on vacation and your Nest is saying, hey, some guy with a mask is at the door and trying to barge in, and it generated the alert, but there is no response to it, right? Then the detection, the alert generation, if you're not able to respond to it, it does not matter, right? And so you want someone to call 911 at that point, and that's the third piece, is the response. And one thing we talk about is small and medium enterprises, especially in manufacturing. Like on the technology side, there are some 300-person AI native cutting edge startups that are very well funded security teams, 15, 20 people in security. And then I see manufacturing companies or in other sectors, they have billions of dollars in revenue and the security team is 2 or 3 people, right? And so how can you tackle the same challenges with 2 or 3 people? And while you can't be as good as a 300-person team at a 50,000-person bank, but you can at least get 5 to 10x better by using the agentic and the AI technology that we have available today. And the reality is the bad guys are using, the attackers are also keeping pace with the technology. They have access to the same models and same capabilities. So the attack windows are shrinking fast, and many of the, the defenders have to keep pace with it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And, I talking about the small to medium size, but really what you're talking about there, that scales for everybody, regardless of the size of your enterprise. That makes a ton of sense. And that manpower issue is not limited to just the medium sized manufacturer. It does go to everybody in a lot of different industries as well. So I like that example. That makes a lot of sense. You guys also put out an interesting study recently talking about investment in AI and how some places were doing well, sometimes not so much, sometimes expectations and dollar allocation doesn't always match up. I was wondering maybe you could talk through a little bit of some of the things that you saw in there that stood out and that maybe would be important for our audience to follow up on. And by the way, we'll definitely provide a link to that because there's a lot of really interesting information in there that really goes beyond cybersecurity and just AI investment total.
We started the company in 23, and in 23, the bet was very aspirational. And same thing from investor side, you can see the trend at which AI was improving. And you think that, hey, 5 years from now, the world will look very different when these 3 years in, even between 25 and 26, there is a dramatic shift. And what has changed in AI landscape is whether AI will have an ROI or not is no longer an open question. There are many companies, like Anthropic is the best and probably the best known example of how much impact it has had. And I can tell you firsthand, I build apps with Claude, and something that would have taken me 3 weeks gets built in 3 hours on a Saturday. You can do the math in there. It's like 20x productivity gain, right? And that's a first-hand information. So the ROI on AI in many areas, it has become very tangible. And that's what a lot of investors in 2026 are looking at. Do you have deployments? Do you have real customers that have deployed agentic technology, that have actually reaped the benefits, that have seen their KPIs improve drastically and their costs go down? And most of the investors are very bullish on AI, but they want to see proof points.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And I think one of the biggest challenges, too, for AI investment right now is all the different options out there. There are a lot of people sort of tugging at those purse strings right now. Just like there was a ton of just this huge rush or huge wave of different cybersecurity tools at one point, too. And it left a lot of folks just trying to figure out what is the right fit? Where do I invest? How do I make sure I'm not duplicating my efforts? Would you have any thoughts or any advice that you could offer folks there when they are making these investments in different AI tools and platforms? What is some advice you can give them to make sure we are doing the right thing? We know we're going to see that ROI in terms of time saved, but up front, making sure we got the right platform.
Right. One of the things that AI has dramatically changed, and especially in many areas like MDR, I'll take managed detection and response. It used to be very commonplace that you have to buy based on promise. Many of the MDR buyers, I would say as much as like 60-70% of the MDR buyers wouldn't even try the service before they buy it. Because the vendor will tell them, hey, it's going to be a lot of work to do a POV. You don't have the time. We would rather get you signed. Like, look, here is a fancy deck. I'll walk you through all the promises that we can deliver. AI has dramatically changed that. You can actually, in an hour, 2 hours, you can actually try these things. Because what you're seeing is it doesn't require people to onboard you. The entire onboarding can be done in an hour to 2 hours. So I think one advice, especially people who are looking at detection and response or who are looking at applying AI, especially to security operations, one shift that I would say, if the vendor cannot do a POV, cannot onboard you in 1 to 2 hours, that actually is probably an indication that they are still using the last generation of technology. And they have not, the solution is not truly agentic. And so you can tell the difference from the get-go. And that's one piece of advice in our domain I share quite a bit is, you wouldn't buy a $50,000 car without taking a test drive. Why would you invest $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 in software without ever taking it for a test drive? But I'm surprised how many people do that, especially when it comes to MDRs.
No, great point. You know, we've been talking a ton about AI, which I knew we were going to. It makes a lot of sense just with where you're coming from and where your company's at. But looking at a little bit broader perspective, looking at cybersecurity as a whole, when we were talking out at RSA, you made an interesting point of saying that a good cybersecurity plan involved building the car around the engine. I thought that was a really interesting analogy. Maybe you can expand on that a little bit for those listening here now.
So I think there is always going to be, build versus buy. And one of the things that many of the times you basically say, if I just have the foundation model, I have access to Anthropic models, OpenAI models, whatnot, right? Open source models. Is that enough? And the real answer is, and it's not a self-serving thing. I'm a technologist. At the end of the day, I'll tell you, you can actually test this, right? I'll give you an example. We are working with a customer that have XIM as their SIM, right? And you can ask Claude to write queries. Now, when it writes queries, we're asking it to look at one thing. It's issuing like 5 or 10 queries and getting one or two of them right? So your hit rate is very low. You're spending a lot on tokens and things like that. But if I give the context, examples that have worked in the past, specific information about how the data is already ingested and stored in that enterprise XIM account, suddenly the accuracy rate jumps up from 10, 20% to high 90%. And that is the layer that goes on top. And unlike last time, now actually there is a word that there is a term now for that piece, the car piece is called the harness, right? And a lot of people are starting to talk about harness engineering. So you have the model and you have the harness around it. And the harness can actually extract much more accuracy from the model that the model is capable of, but without the right context, without the right tooling. Tooling is another example, right? If you don't give, like, especially for investigations, if you don't give access to all the tools in your stack to the model will produce far inferior results. So it's the job of the harness around it to give it access to the right context, give it access to all the tools, and provide it help to really perform at its best potential. And that harness is what I was talking about when you're saying to build a car, you need a very powerful engine, but you also need a very powerful harness around it to deliver the value that we're capable of today.
Well, and I think that's where the people part of it comes in too. We've been talking about all these agents and the things they can do to help streamline things, but that's where you need to have understanding of your organization, of its priorities, of its assets, and all that, and getting that human element involved in developing the harness, if you will, and helping that engine perform as strongly as it possibly can. So we're not discounting the human element of cybersecurity here. We can just strengthen it through all the stuff we've been talking about.
And could not agree more with that, right? A lot of people talk about how AI can augment humans, but what we also see, there is equally important role that humans play in augmenting AI. And so you have the core model at the core of it, you have the harness, and the third layer is the layer of humans that manage, supervise, train, fine-tune the agentic layer to perform exactly what the enterprise needs.
Kumar, this has been awesome. We've been talking a ton about AI, but again, looking more cybersecurity in general. Are there trends that you're seeing out there outside of artificial intelligence that you think could have a big impact on in the segment going forward?
I have been doing this since 2001. I'll tell you, in last 20 plus years, this is the biggest wave that I've seen.
Okay.
Almost every other shift pales in comparison to what the AI is already doing. And
sure.
I think we are in probably second or third innings of the game, right? So already what has happened in last 9 months, even since December, right? People used to compare year over year or 3 years ago, even between November and now, the quality of the models, the capability of the models is far, far more. It's a step function change. And that's barely 6 months, right? And so I'm excited about where it goes. I'm sure there are a ton of things happening, but if you dig one level deeper behind every large trend, you'll find, the AI capabilities. And I think for the next couple of years, it's probably not going to change. Maybe in a couple of years, who knows, quantum might come, but I have not seen any practical applications of quantum. It still seems to be a little bit too early in the research stage. I think AI is the big trend this year, will probably continue to be the biggest trend for the next couple of years, at the very minimum, if not longer.
I think a lot of those agent models are going to evolve as well. I think they're going to become much more, I think it's going to become clear in terms of how to implement them, how to use them, make them more user-friendly so people aren't kind of hunting and pecking a little bit. It's much clearer in terms of how to apply them and how to use them.
I absolutely agree with that. And I'll share another perspective with you, right? I use DoorDash quite a lot. We all use probably Uber quite a lot, right? And if you think of how long did it take for the internet and mobile phone to enable DoorDash? It took about years, not 2, 3 years, probably longer than that, before technologies like Uber and DoorDash and Instacart became available to everybody. Everybody is using it. And we are going through a similar transformation. Obviously, people who are more at the cutting edge have been seeing this very well, but it has not become as mainstream as it can become in the next 2-3 years. So I think it will continue to evolve.
Yeah, that pace is going to be important. I've always been one that says, pump the brakes a little bit, but I think we need to get to a point where, we're going at the right pace, but not being afraid to maybe speed up a little bit more than we have in the past to get on board. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Absolutely. A lot of people are still sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And looking at things with curiosity and wondering when to jump in. And as someone who jumped in with both feet a couple of years ago, I think it's a lot of the benefits have started to appear, right? And it's not an experimental investment anymore. It's actually something you can show ROI in 2 to 3 months.
Thanks, Kumar. To learn more about the work he and his colleagues are up to, you can check them out at AirMDR.com. I'd also like to thank you for joining us today, and to catch up on past episodes, you can go to manufacturing.net, IEN.com, or MBTmag.com. You can also check Security Breach out wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple, Amazon, and Overcast. And if you have a cybersecurity story or topic that you'd like to have us explore on Security Breach, you can reach me at jeff@IEN.com. For Kumar Saurabh, I'm Jeff Ranke, and this is Security Breach.